how to stay out of your kids' way so they can make connections. A parent's guide in like 5 minutes by licensed marriage and family therapist, Roya Dado, and playful parenting expert. That's me. I'm going to jump in. I don't really mean that you should stay completely out of your kids' way. I don't mean that. I mean for you to be an engaged part of your kid's life. But what I do mean to say is that kids need connections for learning and for physical brain development. We need to be able to see how this connects to this and that goes over here. And what our school systems have done they've come in with like giant old school paper cutters and cut up our brains essentially into these very fake segments of history, science, mathematics. And that is not at all mirroring how our brains work. Instead, our brains are a lot more like webs, right? This connects to this and that connects to that, and these neurons and synapses are firing. And if we can make connections, we add these little hooks to how we think, to the knowledge, to our actual brain matter, and that is how learning happens. So what I do want parents to do is to try very, very hard not to get in between their kids and the connections that they might be making. It doesn't always involve your adult, presence. Maybe presence is the wrong word. It doesn't always involve your artificial creation of a connection. If you can start with what your kids are interested in and let that be the start of the seed that links them to this, and then it connects over here, and then that connects to over there, you will be able to turn around and look back and see this incredible web of connections. What happens often is that we as parents get worried that it's not valuable enough or they're not learning enough, and we try to insert ourselves or our agenda, and then we cut off what could be really, really wonderful connections for them. So I want to do a little example here. I picked an interest that I've had several parents talk to me about, that it's either annoying to them, they don't understand what is valuable about it, and it seems kind of silly. And we're going to trace out the connections web. I chose My Little Pony. Okay. So when you first think about My Little Pony, you don't necessarily think about anything really like, intellectually elite. You don't think of it as being like the key to all success in your future, right? But let's think about the places where My Little Pony might be a starting place to connect to more things. So you might have some questions like, when did this franchise start? There's so many different versions of My Little Pony, right? And so maybe just because your kid starts with one, they might watch another and another and another, and they might be thinking all sorts of things about that. And we'll get back to that in a second. They might think, gosh, I want rainbow hair. I'm going to dye my hair. And they might start thinking about friendships, because that's a lot of what My Little Pony is about, right? It's the friendships and it's the relationships and all of that. That's enough, even if it was those three. But watch then what happens. These little things keep going. So friendships might make you start thinking about conflict management, interpersonal communication, problem solving. It might lead you to a discussion of the psychology of relationships and how we get along, and why do different people see the same situation in such different ways, which might lead you to think about family dynamics and multi-generational trauma. And that might lead you down the road of positive psychology or Virginia Satir and family systems. And there's so many different places that a focus on friendship could take you. And I don't have the time in my life to start listing out all the possible connections that can make, but that can just kind of get you started. Then if you take the question about like, when did this franchise start and why are there so many different versions of it? Then you can start thinking about TV animation, and maybe that will lead you down the road of graphic design and voiceover work. And that might take you to other kind of voice acting and looking at books on Audible. And then you've got literally the entire world's written word at your disposal to make connections to. You might look at TV animation, and that might lead you to looking at anime, which might lead you to thinking about Japanese culture and language and customs and travel. And again, literally the entire world. I can't name every single country that might take you to, right? And every single experience, but those are possible connections in an incredibly rich direction. You might, from hair dye, be thinking about why do these different colors work and why does one brand work better than another? And what is it that happens when you bleach your hair and why don't we want to, or why do we want to? And what are the chemical reactions? And that might lead you down a whole other rabbit hole of science experiments and lead you to all sorts of other kind of scientific thought. You might look at hairstyles through history, which might lead you to costume design and art history and world history through that lens. And again, the entire world and time is now open and available to make connections in. You might look at hair dye and hair color or tattoos or clothes as a means of self-expression, and looking at how people use their outward appearance to really express themselves and who they are. And you might look at places in history where that's been true. You might look at uniforms. You might look at this through a social justice lens and think about hair and social justice or civil rights movements, and how wearing different things or doing your hair in different ways might communicate alignment with a certain group or culture, community. I mean, again, the world is where you're connecting here, right? This is all from My Little Pony. I promise you, I absolutely promise you that you could give me any single experience or interest that your kid has, and we can make the same kind of web, these same kind of connections. I'm not saying your kid will be interested in every single one of these, but I am saying that if you cut them off, they're not going to make those connections on their own. So you have to be the reason that web doesn't get cut up. You facilitate. You stay out of their way if they are making the connections, if they are diving in deep. You strew little bits of joy and wonder and next experiences and exposure to things, absolutely. But it absolutely can start from something as kind of silly and simple as My Little Pony. And we didn't even scratch the surface here. If you want to do more than scratch the surface, you can find me at royadato.com. And of course, like and subscribe, and there will be more videos up here. I love to help your kids out, and I really, really love to help you view recreation and leisure as a more valuable tool for your kids' well-being and learning. Talk to y'all later.